Okay, so this is the last of our sessions. The purpose of this, we call this BIM Nation. It's all about the premise of all of the BIM companies from around the country, whether you be a Revit user group, a Revit Jedi online with a blog, or whether you be a non-for-profit organization, or even just a small Revit user group, or up to the large BIM users. The whole point about this discussion on BIM Nation is, where do we go from here? This is like our cheat. This is our free feedback from you guys. We are not saying that the 5 prestigious members of the board up here are the best or right or wrong. They are here for you to ask questions and actually help us grow as a community through ACE and CanBIM and through all of our BIM presenting partners. So we have a facilitator for today, because I think we have a couple of architects up here, so you know how messy that could get. And we have Tom Strong, who's going to manage these guys and keep them in check. So a big round of applause. I'm going to float around and try and encourage you to get up to the mic, and please interact as much as possible. Sometimes this is the first time you've been able to ask these guys questions directly. So really use this opportunity. Okay, enjoy.
Thank you. So I would like to start off just by giving everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves on the panel. So we'll start on the far left here with Allan.
Allan Partridge, Principal Group 2, and the current President of CanBIM, and Treasurer for ACEBIM.
All right. Bill Moore from Associated Engineering, also with the Institute for BIM in Canada, Building Smart Canada.
Mirra Maheden, and I am the chair and founder of eBIMc, which is our local BIM community here in Edmonton.
Sorry, just when you're talking, just make sure you grab that mic and
Pull it off.
maybe just do that once more real quick for everybody.
Okay. Is this better? Sort of.
Yeah, it's much better.
Mirra Maheden, I am the chair and founder of eBIMc, which happens to be the local Edmonton BIM community here.
And my name is John Hale, and I apologize, my voice is almost gone. Slowly getting it back today, but I'm with the Department of National Defense. I'm in charge of BIM implementation for the department and looking to mandate it at some point in time. I'm also a member of CanBIM. I'm also a member of the Institute for BIM in Canada, and I'm currently with Building Smart Canada as well, so I guess that's all I have.
And I'm Brittany Mendiuk. I'm the BIM coordinator for Priority Mechanical, and I'm responsible for the BIM implementation in the subtrades that we're using and fabrication level models.
So I guess one of the big things that we always talk about at these events is contracts and the evolution of contracts and how that affects collaboration. And you know, over my career, I've seen things evolve from a more lump sum adversarial environment, moving to construction management, design build, IPD. So I guess the question is, what do we think the forward trend is over the next 5 years? And whoever wants to be the most aggressive can jump in and answer the question.
I think that we have a 200-year-old process, and by virtue of that, we have contract languages equally as old. We have to begin moving away from the current contract language that has become divisive. It's the current contractual language is anathema to BIM, because the whole notion around the contract language is I don't get paid for doing the next person's job. But with BIM, it should be about sharing and being properly compensated. So my vision is that within 5 years, we've clearly got a contractual framework that is built around an IPD model wherein BIM can evolve to where it should as a technology, and that we employ other things such as lean construction for the process to enable that and do a better job of our buildings.
Any other one want to add to that, or?
I guess I'll add to it. I guess in my mind, the shift that I'm already starting to see, and I'm going to probably continue to see over the next 5 years, is a shift from the benefit to each individual sector is shifting to the benefit of the project. anything that benefits the project is becoming more of the focus rather than my benefit, your benefit. It's the benefit of the project and the benefit of the owner is becoming priority.
In your experience, have you been involved with any projects where as a sub-trade, you're being brought into the project earlier for design assist, and are you seeing more of that?
Yeah, oh yeah. Majority of the projects that we are doing at Priority Mechanical are actually like design assist projects where we're brought on not necessarily into the BIM world as of yet, but we're being brought on earlier to sit in meetings and provide that sort of input to the design process.
So I guess I'll ask lots of questions about technology and where that we think that's going, but because to start by asking about software, I mean, we've seen a lot of examples today from Autodesk and others around changes in software and how that's evolving more of to encourage more collaboration, more social activity with the softwares. There's obviously softwares in all categories. The sub-trades use different technology. The architect, engineers, GCs use different technologies. What do we think the forward trend on that is? Do we think it's going to become more consolidated where the packages are becoming one package, or do we see more diversification? Any opinions on that?
I think we should have neural implants and do it that way. I think that the software will continue to evolve. It's interesting that we tend to use this term BIM, and I know that some of us every time we get together at CanBIM, we often say, what's the next? What is the next thing? What's that soft thing out there that evolves into? And I think the software is starting to become more and more integrated into the workflow in ways that is responsive. It isn't just the deliverables anymore. It is instrumentally working alongside practitioners at various levels to influence the outcomes and to be able to help you to influence the outcomes. Almost that AI level of thinking is starting to come in.
I'd like to, I guess, talk a little bit about, in relation to what Caesar was presenting earlier. So there seems to be a real cloud trend happening. So collaboration via the cloud, teams in the cloud. One of the thoughts that I struggle with is that certainly from our company's perspective, we're getting more and more municipalities with concerns over cloud-hosted projects outside of Canada. And there is no cloud in Canada, public cloud. So we really got to start thinking about private clouds and what the cloud means. And the political environment in the globe is becoming more and more concerning. So companies are more and more, and municipalities are more concerned about their data and where it's being hosted. And so that, I think, is one of the challenges that we're going to be facing, is that the cloud is great, but there are some parameters that need to be put around the cloud. And I think companies like Autodesk have to be aware and think about, what does it mean if I'm working for a client and they say, well, you can use the cloud, but as long as it's a Canadian cloud. And so that's a thought.
And I have a little bit further on that. With the actual infrastructure, if it requires a T1 line, most of us work in older buildings which just can't be able to push that much data stream through the line. So it's great that it's moving towards the collaboration, but we're going to be bottlenecked by the actual infrastructure on the internet.
I think it'd be interesting to get a perspective from John. John is a client in essence, and Bill's brought up an excellent point. John, how would you deal with it?
I don't want to get thrown under the bus here. Is Caesar still in the room?
Yeah.
I thought I will never do this to you again, Caesar, but no. No, I think the cloud's a really hugely valuable tool, especially in the way it's socialized with the Autodesk approach. I think, leading on Bill's comments, I am not certain that we do or do not have web hosting in Canada that, for data center. I think there's a couple data centers available. I know we often at National Defense we get beaten over the head by the Patriot Act, which if it's an American firm hosting the data on anywhere or involved with it, then the U.S. government has the ability to go in there and just has the right to get that data. So if we're hosting information about a national defense or a government project, It's often been a bit of an issue. But if it's hosted in Canada, it's a non-classified project, and we're getting the benefit of the project teams collaborating and being more coordinated, and I'm all for it. Of course, if it's a classified project, it's not even going to hit anywhere in open land. It'll be totally secure and locked down, so I'm all for it.
I think what I want to direct too is it's not just Autodesk that has cloud services, and more what I'm thinking about is in the IT world, there's a real push right now for private clouds, and I think that's probably a better solution than the Amazons and the like out there for hosting our sorts of data. So I'm just hoping software vendors are thinking and building their applications to support both public and private cloud solutions.
So,
sit on the fence a little bit. Sorry, Tom.
yeah, go ahead.
Surprised you there for a second, didn't I? I think that Autodesk's mission today was to actually get some feedback from us on something that they're working on. And I think it's an exciting perspective to put social media and BIM together. I don't think it's finished yet, right? Stop tweeting. So the purpose really is for us to give them feedback, and actually we can become a part of that new possible solution. It's a discussion. So, and just to remind you guys, the mics are right here. Tom is addressing the whole room. The 5 guys up there and the rest of you can answer any of these questions. So one's regarding software, and the second is literally a wish list of what are you going to happen in the next 5 years. So please just feel free to come up.
Yeah, jump up. So it's going to kind of lead into the next question, which is, with the evolution of new softwares and whatnot, there's obviously been a big push to mobile technologies. Everyone in the room probably has an iPad or an iPhone or a smartphone, and the softwares are starting to really, provide some great tools that we can take to the field. So, I'd like maybe get the panel to talk about how that's changed their work, how they're using mobile technologies for their job and day-to-day in the field now, and how they see that evolving over the next 5 to 10 years. And anyone who wants to jump up and talk about that at the mic is welcome to.
I'll answer that one. It's changed mine to be a little bit more multitasking. I'm on the computer, I'm on my iPad, and I'm on my phone all at the same time. So it's, in some ways, it's a little bit more distracting because each one has a different way of accessing information and the information that you want. So sometimes a coworker will come along and they're like, you've got all 3 going, and each one's a different use, and they're great, but sometimes they add a little bit more to the day.
I'll add on to what Mirra is saying. I know with using more of this mobile technology in the construction side, I often have to take a look at what it looks like on my computer, and then what it looks like on my phone, and what it looks like on the tablet, and make sure that it's all right and there's no errors in between the software and the applications that are running it. But also, I find myself exporting different file types constantly. It's the same information and it's the same model, but now it's a PDF, and now it's a floor plan, and now it's a DWFX, and now it's a Navisworks file. And I find myself having to answer phones all the time, can you get me this? Can you get me that? Can you get me this? So I have to export that out, save it to wherever we're saving our files, and then people are taking that information with them to site.
I think the whole idea of the portability and the mobility of data is a great thing, but from where I stand and look at it, there's a tendency I find that it seems to create a lot more noise, and there are days when people seem to be chasing shiny things, and it's like being a kid in Toys R Us. What toy can you manage to carry yourself? And I think that inherently in what we do and what we need to become in the next 5 years is we really need to grapple with the bigger issues of getting our projects delivered at less cost with greater quality. And I just worry that these become distractions. Do I now have to look, as Brittany just said, 3 things: my computer screen, my iPad, and my iPhone, to make sure that the data looks good, because some days it looks great on the screen and your client complains. Now that we've added another factor in, we're giving clients portability, And they're calling up and saying, I don't think you're far enough along this week. It was great before because you could do the Obi-Wan Kenobi, this is not the project you're looking for routine, and it seemed to get away with it. So I think there's some pluses and minuses, and I just worry that we've got bigger issues to tackle, but we don't seem to be tackling those. We seem to be putting all this other stuff on our shoulders.
So the panel thinks that mobile technology can be distracting, and we should stay focused on the work and providing value. So,
I didn't get my answer.
comments from the audience.
I didn't get my answer in there, Thomas. I don't actually think that's the truth.
Okay, good.
I don't get feedback. I think it doesn't matter what device you use, what platform, it's the data at the end of the day. And I really want to put a plug in for the IFC and the open BIM formats that are, in maturity's sake, they're getting there. But it's at the availability of an open BIM data model where you can be guaranteed, if you're using Revit, when you publish out your information, that data format is going to be readable on any platform, anywhere, by any other software vendor doing whatever you want to do with it. So I think that's really important. So really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how the design is authored. It's what you're going to do with it during its life cycle. Might be another Autodesk product, might be something else, and I think that's really the key.
Yeah, I could add, if it's okay. I spoke earlier, for those that sat in my session, about sort of the three aspects of BIM: the business piece, the culture piece, and the technology piece. And we're really talking about, or some of the challenges that I see are the cultural piece. So unless your entire team is committed to this new era of technology, using tablets and using phones and mobile devices, it's very difficult to proceed if you've got members of the team that are reluctant to embrace this new technology and new approach. And that's what we struggle with as a company, is we can get 90% of the team to participate in this digital realm, but there's that 10% that are old school and want to print off papers, and then they're doing markups by hand, and now we lose the data. And that I think is our great challenge. So we need to figure out a way to bring the entire design team into this mobile environment or this digital environment. I don't know what the solution to that is.
Caesar?
Hi. John, I wasn't. Did you think you were going to offend me with your comment?
No.
No, I thought your comment was pretty fair. Okay. I guess you're just
I
checking to
went
see if I
easy.
was in the room. Kind of going back to the comments about distraction and technology, I'll just share a couple different perspectives. One perspective was we did meet with a very important group yesterday talking about cloud, and we met with a very, very senior, long-standing IT professional who basically pointed out to the whole Patriot Act stuff. His view on it was ginormous, big red herring. If the U.S. wants data between Canada and Canada wants data between the U.S., there's already protocols in place to exchange data, so that's a non-issue. The real issue that he did point out, and it's a valid issue, and it's something that I need to go back and validate with our IT architecture staff. Like, these would be the brainiacs that are dealing with our IT, the cloud, the Amazons, because our data does reside on Amazon servers, both in Washington and Virginia, is whether the data for very large accounts resides in a virtual server kind of environment or a physical server environment. So is the data parsed across this server, this server, this server, this server, this server, this server, or is it physically located on this box right here, right now? So that's a big question, because it brings into the conversation backup and getting access to data or whatever they want to do. So that's a big concern there. As far as it being a distraction, so here's my perspective when I go and do these kinds of presentations, not these ones specifically, but the whole BIM 360 presentation or cloud presentation, and doing this for such a long time, this is the wild, wild west of software right now. There are all kinds of vendors offering up specific solutions, which are point solutions, to do this, to do that. So I find it, when I talk to customers, they are very distracted because they're saying, hey, Caesar, does your one thing do this like this other software? And so they're asking open-ended questions, which are very honest, but I can tell there's a lot of confusion around the portability of files, the accessibility of files through the cloud, what one thing does versus another, whether it's applicable to an entire project or a point solution at an area. So it is definitely the wild, wild west of software. The BIM's the easy part now. Like, I think it's a given that we're all going to kind of do BIM moving forward. The mechanisms in which we start to manipulate, view, and share that BIM is really going to be it really will be a distraction, like you said, Alan. I agree with that. And trying to keep a focus on the laggard / gray hair / no hair people in firms who still haven't really bought into BIM may use these distractions to also support their argument is, why should we be changing what we've been doing for 25 years? So it might be an argument to say there's all kinds of things like tablets, Facebook. I don't do any of that stuff as an older senior partner. I may not be interested in doing that. So I would just recommend try to keep a focused discussion, separate the issues, go back to a root understanding or a root strategy that I use. Never assume that everybody you're talking to is using the same definitions that you're using. So how do you define BIM? How do you define collaboration? Talking about the people. Those people and cultures are really the cornerstone of what you want to do.
So we're going to see more and more diversification of softwares, but hopefully the industry starts to standardize around the building information modeling as the one source of truth, and then how you view that, how you get at that information, et cetera. It's going to be more specific to you and the choices that you make, but hopefully all those different softwares equate to more efficiency.
Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to ask about was there's been a huge amount of buzz in the media for the past 5 to 10 years around, probably 5 years around 3D printing. And I've heard things saying that buildings will be 3D printed. And recently there was an article published around the first 3D printed car that could actually drive. So it's 3D printing is also known as additive fabrication, and we've had subtractive fabrication with CNC manufacturing for a long time. We've had plastic injection mold making. Do we think that 3D printing is going to have a huge impact on the construction industry? Do we think that 3D printing is going to allow a different type of design practice to emerge? I'd like to kind of hear from the panel and the audience on that subject.
I think it will. I think that we've got to move away from the notion of putting a building together as a constructed process and moving it towards a fabricated process. And I think that's part of what we trip over is we're constantly thinking of the old ways of doing things. I think it's not at all unreasonable to assume that given the work that's been done in nanotechnology and materials, to be able to begin to think about printing huge pieces of buildings to be assembled in very unique ways. So I think the notion of 3D printing is good because it just becomes scalable. If you can make it work at the size of this jug, then you just scale it up and it becomes something, but it's the material. And I think there's an opportunity here that we miss with this new paradigm that we can be moving into, where we can begin to bring in all of these people, chemical specialists, material specialists that we've never used before. So I think the notion of additive fabrication within building as a fabrication process is one that will grow. And 5 years out, I think we'll be surprised where we are as to how many pieces of a building can get built by a printer.
Jump in.
I'm going to do something that I don't ever try to do because Alan's a genius most of the time, but I completely disagree with you. And from a mechanical standpoint, I don't see that catching on anytime soon. Maybe in the far, far future, 3D printing of mechanical elements might be a reality. But right now, it's just so unpractical to think of a giant crane-sized 3D printer printing off things that are piping that already exist that you just basically thread the ends and put it together. So it's already, these pieces already exist. I think for architectural elements, it may be more so because, I mean, a concrete printer isn't that far of a stretch from stuff that we do now. But from a mechanical standpoint, I think that's unreasonable, and that's one of those BIM beauty images that everybody sees and goes, ooh, ah, but really it doesn't have a practical application as of yet. I don't see one anytime soon.
Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I know we're doing a lot of work up in Alert, and it would be a really cool way of getting those buildings built, but I kind of agree with Brittany. Sorry, Alan. This will be my last panel, I guess, too. So.
Sorry, I think there's a middle way though, in between 3D printing and site-built stuff. There's automation too. The Japanese have been doing it for at least 20 years. I mean, where they have robots doing our screeding, doing slabs. So, and we're getting into swarm technology too, where we can have little robots flying around, maybe delivering little pipes and procedures and processes. So there's something in the middle there too. Watch out for the robots.
Good comment.
So I just wanted to speak on what Brittany said. So it's kind of interesting because you said you don't think that that's going to work because there's these pipes and these pipes already exist. You have to remember that those pipes are made by machines that are, you know, and it's a series of chemicals that make up that pipe, which is no different than a 3D printer, really.
Yeah, so never say never, I guess. Like, so I probably in between now and that far future when there's maybe a giant machine that prints out a building, it's more likely that we're going to have off-site fabrication and more prefab, more modular construction. And parts of that may be 3D printed, I would imagine. But from your perspective, working in mechanical trades, what are you targeting for off-site fabrication? Do you see your business evolving so you have a bigger off-site facility? And how do you think that you see that evolving over the next few years?
I guess I'll address your multi-tiered question first by saying that right now we're focusing on getting a lot of the welding done prefab. The welding stuff on site is dangerous, it's time consuming, weather conditions kind of have to be perfect. So we're trying to do that off-site. A lot of the welded aspects are off-site. I think with some time and success permitting, we would like to expand our off-site capabilities with more infrastructure, more storage, more things like that. But for now, we kind of have to, and I don't want to step on any toes, but we kind of have to move at the same pace as everybody else. We can't jump ahead and say we're doing prefabrication on everything because, like I said earlier, it only takes one person, one trade to say we're not on board, and the whole kind of process collapses. So unfortunately, we kind of do have to move at a steady pace with the rest of the industry.
So John, as an owner, do you think that if you were to specify or mandate an off-site approach to your project, that would help the design and construction, supply and subtrade community mobilize and procure the building that way? Do you think that would facilitate that by specifying at the beginning of the project? Or do you think that an owner should have a role in that? Or should it be just means and methods and left up to them? Sorry, I'll keep talking until you answer.
Yes. I do think there's a huge role we can play. We've already demonstrated benefits of off-site fabrication, mostly for housing that we have on a couple of our bases. And I do think we have a big role, but I think we have to understand better how to actually ask for it to be delivered that way and be a little more knowledgeable as owners, and we're still learning in that regard. We can use any feedback, though, if anybody has any.
I think as well that off-site fabrication, the notion of pre-assembling pieces gives us a good opportunity. You know, in this room there's a lot of architects, engineers, contractors, and owners, but we have a huge cultural community problem that faces us, that we've got this huge shift happening in the workforce. And we actually have a situation globally that is extremely unique, wherein that we have jobs with no people and people with no jobs. And I think this is an opportunity that we can retool an entire workforce to effectively put buildings together with relatively little skill that's needed to do so. It just, and it's actually in a kind of, don't want to use a term, but I guess I will, perverse way of going back to the building of pyramids, where it just took labor to pull it together. So I think this is an opportunity to engage perhaps at a level people who may not have had an opportunity 10 years ago to work in the workforce, but now could be helped with skill sets to assemble buildings in a not dissimilar way to how we put a car or an aircraft together.
Do you view, I mean, off-site fabrication obviously is going to create an opportunity to fabricate in one location and build in another location very efficiently and very quickly, and obviously there's an opportunity there to build or do that to off-site fabrication anywhere on the planet. So those jobs could be created overseas and the buildings imported into Canada and assembled. Or is that a threat to the Canadian economy, or is that an opportunity for the Canadian economy to set up the fabrication facilities here and export those buildings to emerging economies in Africa or wherever that may be?
I think so. I think we have to be extremely cautious in Canada. If anybody's read the BIM UK task force, it's not so much that they're enabling BIM, but the Minister of Finance and everything else clearly stated it's an opportunity for them to bring an entire workforce up to a level that they can export those skills globally. So here we have the British coming again. And I think that we have to do something here in our own home turf to begin to build that workforce up in ways that are unique. So I think it can be a bulwark, because if we don't, if we still have the discrepancy in Canada of jobs with no people and people with no jobs, then it's going to be filled with a cheaper product. And that's the way the economy goes. So we have to look internally at ways in which we can use. Next to energy, infrastructure is the biggest industry on the face of the earth. And yet we're the most inefficient. And we have a relatively small labor pool that we're drawing from. So I think off-site fabrication is an opportunity at all levels that government should take notice of.
Hi there, Will Myers, Global E-Training. My question comes sort of as a confluence of a couple of concepts that were discussed. One of them is the sort of culture of BIM, and the other one is the idea of people with no jobs and jobs with no people. That's close to my heart, which is the concept of training. And I wonder, in this rapidly advancing technological age, with these rapidly advancing workflows, processes, rapidly advancing technology, where do you see the training element of this taking off in the next 5 years?
Well, I think we have to, at one level, I'm always joking at why do people in businesses employ 12-year-olds? It's because the 10-year-olds are already taken at an IT level. So I think we have to begin very, very early, and we have to remove the aura in two aspects. One, that being a tradesperson is not something for a person of a lesser intelligence. It's a respectable, professional, it's a job that is a great job. And we've got to remove from our architectural and engineering schools the notion of the cult of the architect. You know, the reality is 90% of all buildings on the face of the earth don't involve an architect, so pretty well tells you we're not a very good value proposition. So we've got to change those things around. So I think it starts at that level. And we've got to do it now. We've got to be doing it with the grade 5 and 6, because basically 10 years from now they're in the workforce and we can't afford it. So I think that education has to change. And you know, the work that Pietro and Susan are doing on CanBIM to look and explore that is quite remarkable. How can we change the notion of education to give ourselves that opportunity? Because the reality is, you know, we're not doing the 2 and a spare anymore. You know, there isn't the workforce coming from growth.
And still waiting for that neural implant.
That's
Thank you.
I just wanted to add on to kind of the education side of things. It's I was a student not all that long ago, and I know a lot of the large areas of education and colleges and things are lacking in a BIM course. They're in the process of making one, but the challenge facing with that is that every single company and every single aspect in the industry is using BIM differently, and they're using different combinations of software and different workflows, and they're always established differently because they're all trying to achieve different goals. Mine being prefabrication, someone else's may be collaboration in the cloud, someone else's may be something else. So we're all using different tools to achieve different goals. So it's difficult to come up with one teaching solution for so many different customized approaches to the industry. But if anybody hasn't talked to Global E-Training about that yet, they have something called the Generator. And I guess I'm going to just, here's a free sales pitch. But that's kind of an approach to the training challenges that we're facing, where you can customize it, that training. It has the basics, and you would customize it to suit your own internal workflow. And I think that education kind of has to go in that direction, because there's just too much to teach everything.
So I'm going to spin wheels a little bit. The gentleman at the back mentioned swarm technologies for construction, which is an interesting concept, and I think he's probably referring to UAVs and the concept of drones, or maybe even many small robots working together to build something. So UAVs is a topic that has come up quite a bit recently, and I'm just curious to see who in the room is used a UAV in construction in our industry, and how they're using it, and what that experience has been, and maybe the red tape involved with getting the proper license to use that sort of technology in our industry. Anyone? No one? Okay.
I just wonder if we can can they come equipped with Hellfire missiles so we can get rid of bad buildings?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Do you, Allan, since you spoke up, do you think that they're going to have an impact on how we collect information in the field? Do you envision a world where many UAVs are flying around construction sites collecting information and providing information in real time? Do you see an application for that sort of technology in our industry, and where do you think that'll be in 5 years?
I think that one of the aspects that 80% of the cost of a building ends up being operating the building. I think the notion of having UAVs and to capture data as a building is being constructed would be vital for a facilities management process. I don't think in 5 years we're going to have as much problem with contractors building what was represented in the model itself. I think the huge problem is we've got to improve the way we operate buildings. I think they have a great application tied in with scan data that then can be registered. You can have a progressive understanding of how the building was put together, and perhaps anticipate other issues with the building, and provide the owner with a fully complete building as it was constructed, as to know where things are when they come to retrofit that building. It in effect becomes the document of record of the building. I think that would be a huge help.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to add that when we think of BIM, we tend to always think of it in the context of buildings only. We're forgetting completely about our infrastructure piece of BIM. So for bridge inspection, where it's unsafe to hang off the side of a bridge, that would be an ideal application for something like this. Same thing when you've got high traffic volume areas, you've got water treatment plants where you can't disrupt flow to do inspection, so you're able to use UAVs to go in and inspect areas that otherwise would be extremely disruptive to the community.
Gentleman at the back here.
Hi, Jeff Duffield with PCL and ACE-BIM. I thought I'd just add a little bit of update on aerial drones in our world. So we started using them in the U.S. On a major project for site photos, and a great use of increasing productivity and capturing data so that you can look at those for lots of reasons down the road. Unfortunately, through the FAA in the U.S., we've shut them down across all of the U.S. because it's illegal to use them for commercial use, and we've got our legal department kind of working through that in the States. In Canada, I'm working with the NRC for specifications they own, the standard or like general specifications on projects, and the Transport Canada. So we're just trying to figure out this issue. What's the easiest way? Right now, it seems to be regulated by you know, RC pilots, so the people that operate remote planes and whatnot. There is talk about if there's some sort of tethering system, then it might be able to be used. There's training required to be certified to use them through the RC kind of way. So, you know, it's like technology comes at us very quickly, and how, you know, our business process is capable of adopting that through legislation and just you know, making the most effective use is certainly something that everybody's going to be experiencing a lot in the future. So,
great, thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Thomas, I'd like to change topics if I might.
Sure, go ahead. You
Just
can moderate.
Building on a couple of the comments from the panelists. So, Ken Gibson, Alberta Construction Association. We have 3,000 member firms across Alberta, non-residential, primarily building markets served, all the way from folks with 5 employees up to Ellis, Dawn, and PCL. The reason I think ACA is interested in the fact that you've brought all these folks together. So back in about late 2008, Alberta Infrastructure came to ACA and said, we're going to mandate the use of BIM by 2010. Every project will be BIM by 2010. And John just mentioned his desire to see that happen at some point with DCC. As far as I know, Public Works Government Services Canada is still on track. They've announced 2014. And the reality, we went out that year and we talked to our member companies across the province. We do regional roundtables. And we asked the question, so how many of the folks in the room had actually heard of BIM? And this is 2009. And we must have talked to probably 100 different members in probably half a dozen different locations. The answer at the time was 2. So we went back to Alberta Infrastructure and basically said, are you frigging crazy? And so they backed off. And here we are today in 2014, and we're still no closer. But back to the point that Brittany brought up. So I think before we're going to see widespread adoption of BIM, we need to have a shared understanding of exactly what is the deliverable and what's the culture to provide that. What are the contract documents and standards of practice that are adopted so that the various communities, architects, engineers, contractors, and suppliers, along with owners and facility managers, have a shared understanding of the goals and where we're trying to get to and how we're going to get there. And then to specifically to Brittany's point, when we talk to member firms, there aren't any practitioners out there. There's nobody, there's not sufficient capacity outside of leaders such as the folks in this room, which is representing a tiny fraction of the total industry. There's no capacity to do this. So I'm really excited to see how CanBIM and AceBIM have brought all of you folks together. And I'm wondering if you could share from your perspective of eBIMc and AceBIM and CanBIM, Institute for BIM in Canada, what do you see as the value add that your organization would like to bring to help equip not just the folks in this room, but our membership across 20,000 contracting firms in Canada, 14,000 licensed architects across Canada. I think it's about 15,000 consulting engineering firms. What do you see your organization bring that adds value to solve that disconnect between what the owner is asking for, the public sector owner is asking for, and where we're at today? Because I serve on the board of directors for AceBIM. We're asking for your membership dollars. CanBIM's asking for your support. IBC is asking for membership dollars. I think the eBIMc and CBIMc are the only folks who are actually voluntary. And at some point, I'm sure when you go back and your management discusses this, you guys are saying, there's a lot of people asking for our money, what the heck are they delivering? So perhaps we could ask the panelists just to provide some comments.
Your vision. Talk about your vision from the, I guess, from the organization.
I can answer that one. Ours is to break down the competitive nature that we all have. We are in an industry where we actually are competitive people. We're A-type personalities. So it sort of brings a networking and an ability to have relationships and to bond with other people so that we're not in a position of against each other, but working together. And that's important. So now we can actually call people up and talk to them instead of, sitting there and not doing anything. So that's our value, and our goal is so that we actually work together to make things simpler for all of us.
Well, if I might address the questions, I guess the first clarification I need to make is IBC is not asking for money. In fact, there's no opportunity to join IBC unless you're a member of a constituent organization that's one of the founding partners. Building Smart Canada, however, has the opportunity for membership and participation. So IBC, the plan, the end of this month, will be releasing contract language. It's an appendix that will sit alongside an existing CCDC or ACEC contract that addresses specifically BIM. So that will be available at the end of the month. In addition, we've written a practice manual, and we've got 2 more volumes to author. And we've got toolkits that explain how to fill out a project execution plan. And the toolkits, there's 3 versions of them. One is from the perspective of an owner, the other's from the perspective of a contractor, and the third is from the perspective of a practitioner like an architect or engineer. So those toolkits, that contract language is what we're bringing to the industry to help move the industry along. We're still in a position, however, where this is a push effort. So architects, engineers, we're pushing BIM. What we really need to do is have the owners pull BIM. As soon as that owner pull happens, that is when we're going to have adoption across the board. So we need to figure out how we're going to get the owners to pull us. And then owners in Canada don't have an organization that we can lobby to participate. So we've got a real education piece ahead of us to get the owners interested in BIM, to understand what BIM means to an owner, and understand the impact of BIM for construction versus BIM for the life of a building. Those are 2 distinctly different periods of time, and everybody's focused on the construction portion of what BIM is. We need to look at the big life cycle piece, and the owners need to understand what that means to them and being able to leverage that data. John, you can probably speak more to that from an owner's perspective.
Thanks, Bill. That is one heck of a loaded question, and great question. I'm getting a lot of feedback. From an owner's perspective, we were one of the first departments within the federal government to have a BIM mandate, and we were looking at for integrated BIM around 2015. And we have spec'd out many contracts, and contrary to maybe what was said in the question, we found that we weren't asking for BIM, but we had a lot of projects being delivered to us with people giving us Revit. So we started asking for BIM, and then we didn't know how to ask for it very well. So we were looking for industry bodies and standards to be able to say, please follow this process or this. And we realized there's these massive gaps. So as an owner, we decided on a second front that it's pretty silly to ask for advanced modeling or advanced deliverables when you don't plan on actually consuming that BIM model and use it for life cycle, as Bill just mentioned. So we're as a department looking at, there's a heck of a lot of information in this building information model. How do we apply that to the life cycle and where all the value is? Like it's like a quarter of the full cost of the actual build construction and extending over its life cycle, and it's about 4 times the cost of construction. So we're looking focused at actually asking for those other parts of BIM going forward, and we need to actually actively engage other owners to have them get on board and start realizing that we need to start really setting out a roadmap for the adoption of BIM in Canada. And I don't think it's just one body. In the UK, they were very lucky to have they have a construction portfolio, and there's about $60 billion worth of construction that's all state-owned. So that's a huge part of the overall industry in the UK. So it's easy for one cabinet minister to get up and have a beautiful strategy for construction that's included BIM and IPD, but we don't have the similar type thing in Canada. So we have, we're really provincially driven, municipally driven, and a lot of owners. So how do we get all those groups together? I think it kind of starts with having organizations like CanBIM, grassroots like eBIMc in the city, and then have all those at the national level, have it put together with a great framework. So, Al, that's my long-winded answer.
Well, CanBIM is the business voice of Canada's BIM community. And I think in that, BIM is a business choice. It's neither mandated or legislated. In reality, the use of BIM in Canada can't be told how to be used. It has to be the businesses saying how they use it. And so I think the whole notion of us cooperatively working together to produce documents that come from that grassroots level, not associations dictating, but the Priority Mechanical, the ACOMs, all of those producing that raw data is very important. So having the tools based on what the industry has, and one of the things that I'm particularly proud of what the committees have adopted at CanBIM is that the approach is to be generally right and move ahead, so things are not complete, rather than being prescriptively correct and going absolutely nowhere. And that is the pattern that is often set when we come to standards. The other aspect to it is, and I want to go back to a comment about what Ken made, is you excluded, Ken, the fact that we have legislated structure provincially and federally that works anathema to what we have in terms of the future with BIM. And I speak primarily of, in Alberta, as an example, Public Works Act. That's what gets in the way. The fact that we have the drive to the lowest capital cost is getting in the way instead of exploring the right cost to the owner over time. When we think of the small portion that the capital takes up, it pales in comparison to the cost to the owner over time. These tools have the opportunity for this industry to address that longevity. So I think that's part of the problem that we face and why there isn't this traction. We've got a huge disconnect at the public sector level with legislation. And so I think that's important. And as far as CanBIM's concerned, we're just going to business as usual, make a robust Canadian community that can stand up to the pressures that are going to come from outside. If we don't do that, then we'll just roll over and let the Balfour BDs come in and take over.
So, just a quick question, Alan. I actually, what's more to the room, if owners aren't involved in asking for BIM, and it's not written in contract language, how are we possibly gaining benefits across the design, construction, and the life cycle management of our built assets? And that's a show of hands in the room. Is there anybody in the room, if represent a construction firm or a design firm, are you actually going to risk doing this? Using a tool that's really not being asked for, or deliverable that's not being asked for? It's very few.
I think, John, as well, to your comments, a valid one in terms of where we are in the stream of time. I think it's important for us to realize that the industry, owners won't dictate the use of it at the end of the day unless they see the value proposition. And we, as an industry, we constantly do ourselves a disservice, in my opinion, because what would happen if tomorrow, John, you had a proposal call come out and every construction and every architect and engineer refused to put an RFP in unless you did it the way we say it should be done, and guarantee that we'll carry the risk, we'll deliver the project to you, and if you've got a $100 million project, I'll carry the risk, no problem. I'll manage architectural risk. Tom will manage the construction risk. I think that's the problem. We still have this process that drives to the lowest cost, and that's the value proposition. And at the end of the day, on the evaluation criteria, when you get 80 points because you're a BIM expert, there's 20 points in there for the fee, and that's what separates it at the end of the day. So I think we have to make those kinds of changes.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. I just want to make sure these gentlemen waiting patiently at the mics have a chance to speak. I wasn't watching who got up first, but maybe you can self-police.
Hi, I'm Christian, working for YQB Airport in Quebec City. One thing, well, I hear a lot about design, construction, and all that, and I know there's a lot of professionals, you know, a lot of business around that. So I don't worry about a good design anymore because of the 3D modeling and everything you're talking about during the two last days. But we don't talk enough about how we get that information to the owner in a way that he can use it. Because as an owner, when we first started looking at this, we were kind of scared about getting a huge Revit file with a lot of things and having to maintain training for people in-house, how to use that and all that. And we have problem just using our facility management system that we own. So how can we get that information and get it into that system in a way that we don't have to retype everything? So get that information, digitalize it, and import it right away. So do you have any suggestions on that?
I think we're a little bit out there, but we're looking at open BIM formats, and we're looking at our processes, and we realize that we're about to redesign some of realign some of our for one, our project delivery process, and it really won't kick into effect for a couple of years. But what we're really looking at is that core key information and identifying, you know, as custodian, we have 22,000 buildings and X amount of properties to manage, and we need just certain information for enterprise resource planning, portfolio planning. It all begins with, you know, we have a building, we know what's inside that building. BIM defines that very well. We follow the IC schema. That data's all there. It's maturing. How do we get that data into a database? And then how do we get that database integrated with other corporate systems that actually need that information? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to identify what are all these other uses and extend them, and then start informing ourselves how to ask for that during the construction phase. Construction is only minor to us, and it helps us at both ends, both feed pre-design, going into contract, getting design delivered, construction, building occupancy, getting that information going forward. And I think that's kind of where we're going, and we're really, really jazzed about the IC format. We're actually taking IC format, turning into a SQL database. It's a spatial database, and we're going to integrate that with our master business data and be able to apply that, you know, whatever tool, whatever way we want.
The fact that you're the one answering means that owners needs to take care of the entire process. We need to get involved from day one to the end. That's the way we're thinking. By setting objectives and making sure the teams, you know, reacts and fill those objectives. Well, the thing you're saying is exactly how we think it should be, but there's not a lot of people supporting that part, you know, helping owners to do this. You need to be a really educated owner to do that. And, you know, some small companies like ours can do a little bit of this, but some cannot because they don't have the expertise. So that's.
I think stay in the same track. But if the industry evolves, I think that will become common practice.
Yeah.
Leslie Boyer, Site BIM. One of the ways that I believe that we can get to the owner is through BOMA, Building Owners and Managers. I have been a member for a few years. I know there's other people here who are members of BOMA. I think the approach would be more on a business case and management level of introducing these the services that we do, not a technical approach, which we all prefer. We all enjoy deeply the technical aspects, but I think we have to go with a different mindset to BOMA to engage them in working and appreciating what it is that we do. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna cut off any more responses there because we're out of time. But I just want to really, thank everyone who participated in the panel, and thank you very much from the audience for all the questions and whatnot, and a little round of applause for the participation.